from Jefferson, and then the letter from George Washington to James Madison, and kind of introduced those two men, Madison and Hamilton, right? And the fact that they're going to start, they're going to play a big role. Both were proteges of very important men in Washington and Jefferson. And so it's a meeting at Annapolis. And I was actually in Annapolis this summer. My niece got married in Annapolis. And so my sister and I were walking around the town. And it's really kind of a cool town. It's very old. And so a lot of the original buildings are still there from the 1700s. And so we went looking around. Obviously, it's very kind of a touristy area, beautiful shoreline and bay area where people sail and stuff like that. And so I actually tried to find the place where Madison and Hamilton met and talked about the need for kind of starting over. So the Articles of Confederation, and it says, we just need to scrap this thing and start over from scratch. So they called for this constitutional convention, okay? And so that's going to be the focus of our discussion today, will be the convention itself and the men that are there and the topics of discussion, okay? So if you're doing a new header in your notes, Constitutional Convention is where you would start, okay? And so we'll look at the founders and who was there and who wasn't there, okay, importantly, okay? So there's going to be 55 delegates to the convention, okay? So 55 delegates representing 13 states, okay? Notables that are not there. Jefferson is not at the Constitutional Convention. Where's Jefferson? He's in Paris, right? With Sally Hemings, yes? I will post a video. I showed you guys the one, Rebels with a Cause. I have another video called A Healthy Constitution from the same series. So that's actually Rebels with Cause, the first video, and A Healthy Constitution is the fourth video of the series. And I showed it to my regular governments last week. So Jefferson's in Paris. Does anybody know where John Adams is? He's not there. This is one of those kind of funny ironies in history. John Adams is going to become the ambassador to Great Britain. And remember, it was John Adams that was the one that was really fighting for independence from Great Britain. And so in that series, John Adams, that HBO did, it's quite interesting to watch because he has to go meet with the king, King George III, after, we win the American Revolution. And there's all types of protocols when you go to meet the king. Like, you're not supposed to look the king in the eye. So when you walk in the room, the king's up on his throne or his chair or whatever. When you walk in the room, you have to bow. Okay, this is John Adams bowing to the king. And then you kind of walk up and stand in front of you, you have to bow again. And then you can't speak unless you're spoken to when you're talking to the king. And so this was obviously a very awkward situation for John Adams and for the king. No question, okay? So Adams isn't there. Jefferson's not there. Two of the most important people when it came to the Second Continental Congress, right? Hancock has gone on to become governor of Massachusetts. He's not there. And Patrick Henry's not there. And you guys know, and I've been grading your essays, Some of them are really good. I've graded 22 so far between the two classes. So I'm getting there. Some of yours have been graded. I'm trying to get at least 10 done a day. Actually, I think compared to other years, I'm doing really well with these. So hope to have them done before too long. Okay. But anyhow, Patrick Henry obviously played a very big role in this. He's not at this convention because he doesn't like the idea of this new Constitution. He's worried about a strong national government. Okay, and that's what George Washington was calling for, was for a stronger national government, something that would be able to hold the 13 colonies together. And so you're going to see Patrick Henry is probably the loudest opponent of this new Constitution. Okay. Now, who is there? 7 governors. Okay. 7 governors will be there. So this is going to last for 3 months. So 7 governors are going to be gone. 7 signers of the Declaration. Ben Franklin's going to be there. He's still alive. Okay. Obviously, Madison. And he will become known as the father of the Constitution, right? I think I told you that, right? And probably most important, I don't know if most important, but George Washington's going to be there. Okay? And George Washington is, he's almost like a God figure. He is definitely a father figure, and we'll call him the father of our nation, right? And so when Washington shows up to this convention, it really adds substance to it. Or you could say Washington has gravitas. You heard that term gravitas before? Maybe you've had a vocab word for English, gravitas, okay? This is a word that has really gotten into the political lexicon in the 21st century, and it started in 2000 when George W. Bush was running for president, okay? And everybody started using this word gravitas, okay? George W. Bush put in charge of his, when they look for a vice presidential running mate, they kind of put together, okay, who would be a good fit to be your running mate, okay? So he put this guy named Dick Cheney in charge of looking for a vice president. And Dick Cheney had been in government for 30 years by that point. Had been a chief of staff, had served in Congress, advised presidents in other areas. And Dick Cheney's doing this search, and after doing the search, he says, "You know what, George, I think I'm your best pick for vice president." And so Bush chose Dick Cheney to be his running mate. Okay, you remember that name, Dick Cheney? I don't know if you remember that name. Okay, he was George W. Bush's vice president for 8 years. And as soon as that announcement was made, there was a commentator on CNN that said, Dick Cheney brings gravitas to the Bush ticket. Okay, a few minutes later on CBS, there's another talking head. Says, Cheney brings gravitas to the ticket. Another channel, gravitas. Another channel, gravitas. And this word that nobody used is now all of a sudden being used by everybody. So Saturday Night Live did a really funny skit on gravitas, okay? George Washington is the definition of gravitas, okay? He brings weight, substance, authority to this convention, okay? Just adding a little modern political history in with this, okay? All right, so 31 of the 55 had attended college, and they were all wealthy, with the exception of one. There was a farmer that was invited. His name was William Few. You don't need to know that for the test, but William Few was not a wealthy man, okay? But the rest of them were, all right? The average age of these 55 men was 42 years old. Now, of course, life expectancy is around 46. So now Franklin's in his 70s at this point. Okay, so many of these guys long outlived their life expectancy of the day. Okay. Now, based on their experiences, these 55 men, they all believed in the social contract theory. They believed in democratic rule, not pure democracy, right, but representative government. In fact, these guys, I think I've mentioned this before, they feared direct democracy. Okay. So really, they understand the need for representative government. Okay. And what they're going to do is create a system of mutual frustration. When we talk about checks and balances and stuff like that, they're setting up a system where it's very difficult for one group to gain a lot of power. Okay. So power is checked. You can block vice with vice. Okay, and so really by setting up this system of mutual frustration, they restrict government's power. Okay, for instance, today, there are a lot of businesses and a lot of individuals that have lost their jobs and businesses that are hurting in this country, right? So during the pandemic, they passed the $3.3 trillion package, like an aid package, the CARES package, and so forth, right? Well, we're waiting on another one, right? And it's in the House. That's where it's got to start because it's going to spend a bunch of money, right? So you've got the Democrats controlling the House under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi. The White House and the Senate need to agree to this package, and it just doesn't seem to get done. This situation is mutually frustrating to many people. Yes? Okay, and that's the way the system was designed. If it was easy to pass laws, we would have more of them, right? And generally when you pass laws, it's a restriction on what? On your freedom. So they want to make it difficult to pass laws. Okay, it shouldn't be easy. There needs to be consensus, okay, and compromise. All right. Now, Trump keeps saying that Nancy's had a $2.2 trillion package. Now, she is not negotiating with President Trump. They don't get along. The last time they were in a meeting together, Pelosi and Trump, it was about 4 months ago. And she ended up storming out of the same room. He's been Mnuchin's a pretty level-headed guy. He's a calm guy. There's certain things that the Democrats want in this bill that the Republicans reject. There's a senator that came up with a $500 billion, package just like for emergency relief for businesses and individuals. So hopefully they can work out a compromise between the two sides. Okay. There's politics involved with this as well. If they don't get an aid package done by the election, Pelosi maybe thinks, well, then that will hurt Trump. Okay. If Trump can convince the American people it's Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats' fault that we don't have an aid package, then maybe it'll help Trump. You see, they play off this for political reasons, and who's stuck in between? The American people. Okay. So really, remember that first quote I read to you by Churchill, where democracy is the worst form of government ever contrived by man, right? Except for all the rest. Okay. It can be messy. And these guys that are coming up, these delegates that are coming up with this Constitution, want to check power, but they also want to give the government enough power so that we can run this efficiently. Okay. Now, as far as the day-to-day operations of this convention, okay, Washington is going to be named the chair or the chairman of the convention. So he will be the one in that same seat that Hancock was in that same room during the Second Continental Congress, okay? Now, as far as why do we call Madison the father of the Constitution? Because he's going to bring a plan for government. Where's he from? And he's going to bring that plan with him, okay? And he takes notes. So it's Madison's notes during the convention that really give us insight to the debate during the convention, okay? I picked this baby up from the History Book Club a few years ago, and it's got Madison's writings in it. It's got the full text of the Virginia Plan in it, and it also has sections where his notes can be found in here as well from this convention, okay? So understanding the debate that went into the different decisions is important to understanding what they specifically meant. Because, guys, the Constitution is a very short document. It's a very broadly written document. So to fill in and understand the gaps in this document, Madison's notes are very helpful. So that's why they call Madison the father of the Constitution. Okay. All right. Now, the Virginia Plan won't be exactly what we wind up with, but it is a basis to start the debate from. Okay. Now, in order to agree on anything, okay, each state in the convention gets one vote. So if you have 4 people from Virginia, okay, they get one vote, okay, as a group. And there were internal fights within these delegations, okay. The majority ruled, okay, so you could pass, you could agree to something with a majority. You didn't need 9 of 13. You just need a majority, okay? Makes it a little more efficient. And you had to have a quorum to vote. You guys know what a quorum is? I know you got, National Honor Society. Have you had any meetings yet? Anybody in that? Okay. Generally, when you have a group or an organization, like the Whispering Brook Homeowners Association, okay, in order to agree to anything, you have to have a quorum present, which means a certain number of people present to do business. Okay, so like in the United States Senate, a quorum is 51. Okay, with these states, in order to do any business, a quorum must be necessary. Now, your bylaws of the organization will determine what is a quorum. So, like, there's 77 houses in Whispering Brook. Okay, so a quorum is, I think it's half plus 1 need to be present to do business. Okay, when we have a meeting. Okay, which you never get that many people. Okay, so you've got to go around and get permission to vote on behalf of a homeowner. Okay, so you go around and get their, it's not like a power of attorney, but it's, I forget what we call it. It's kind of like a power of attorney where you agree this person votes. Okay, so, or that's not spelled right. Quorum. That's spelled right. Quorum. Okay. All right. They met for several hours a day. The dates here, this is like May. Yeah, May 25th through September 17th. So this is going to take a while. Okay, you got June, July, August, September, about 3.5, 4 months. Okay. All right. So, as I stated, Madison is going to bring his plan. Okay, which is called the Virginia plan. Okay. So let's look at the basics of this plan. Okay, Madison calls for a strong national government. Three branches. Bicameral legislature. Both houses based on population. So which states is this going to favor? Big states. The more populated states, okay? Now, under this, there's three major powers that the national government's going to get, okay? And the one is power to tax. Regulate trade. And three, make national laws. This scares people, that this national government can make laws over the whole country. Okay, because under the Articles of Confederation, very difficult to do that. Okay, and there's no enforcement. So remember, when we get three branches, we now have an executive and a judicial branch that can step in here, okay, and help enforce or decide these, make these decisions, okay. Now, under this system, the legislature, the people would choose the first house. The first house would choose the second house. Now, if the legislature passes a law, in order to veto, you need both the executive and judicial to veto. So this is really giving more power to the legislative branch than the other two. Okay. Now, if you are Delaware, you have about 82,000 people in your state. And Virginia has almost 7. Does this scare you? If you live in Delaware or Rhode Island, are you thinking to yourself, these big populated states are going to have all these representatives, we're going to have very few, and they're going to dominate us? Okay? So this is Madison's plan. Now, he doesn't introduce it. He has another guy, Edmund Randolph, introduce it for him from Virginia. And so Madison can watch the room. So there's, and obviously some of these small states, this favors large states. Some of these small states are going to be like, I don't like this. Okay. Now, in order to pass this whole thing, you need 9 of 13. Okay, the majority decisions were for minor decisions. Okay, so you got that's the Virginia plan, right? Good. So does anybody remember the competing plan from last year? You had the Virginia plan and the small state plan. Nobody remembers that? Okay, that's why I'm here. It's called the New Jersey plan. Now, New Jersey is a pretty big state today. Back in the day, it wasn't. Now, this is going to be introduced by a guy named William Patterson. Okay. Now, the New Jersey plan is a step up from the Articles of Confederation. Okay. They have 3 branches. A unicameral legislature. Okay, this mirrors the Articles of Confederation, this legislature, right? They each get 1 representative. Okay, unicameral, 1 body, and each one. Okay, so that makes every state equal. So Virginia and New Jersey are equal in the legislature. Okay. The executive branch, okay, or the president, would be chosen by the legislature, making it a what type of system? Parliamentary. The Supreme Court, the judicial branch, would be kind of like the Supreme Court is today. Okay, just one tribunal. You guys, under the Virginia plan, they were using a parliamentary system as well. Okay, so the Congress would choose the president, not the people. So when we wind up with what we end up with on the president side of things, it's going to be far different than either one of these plans. Okay. All right. So they debate this. Okay. And remember, they started in May. On June 19th, they vote between the New Jersey plan and the Virginia plan. Okay. 7 vote for the Virginia plan, 3 for the New Jersey plan, and 3 are on the fence. So either like their delegation is divided or they just abstain from voting. They abstain courteously. So the debate over this goes on for another month over these 2 plans. Okay. And so eventually, after another month, Connecticut comes up with a compromise. Now, there's another term for this Connecticut plan. The Connecticut Compromise. There's another name for it. No? It's a really important compromise. Ah! The Great Compromise. Okay. So really what we're arguing over here mostly is over the legislature and how it's going to be set up, right? You got one that's based on population, one that's equal. Connecticut says, well, duh, let's do a bicameral legislature. Okay, 2 houses. One will be based on population. Chosen by the people. Right? The House of Representatives. And the other one, we're going to call the Senate. You know, like the Romans did. We're not going to call it the House of Lords like the British. Okay? This is going to have 2 for each state, giving states equal representation. Now, these people will be chosen by state legislatures. Voila. Let's vote on it. Okay. Now, is this what we have today? The Senate is chosen by the people, not by state legislatures. Now, this is originally how it was, though, right? This is what's in the Constitution. So in order to change this, you would have to do what to the Constitution? Amend it. Okay, so there's 27 amendments. You got 1 in 27 chance. Actually, 1 in 17, because it's not the Bill of Rights. So what amendment changed this? How'd you know that? The 17th Amendment changes this. Now, to direct election by the people for the United States Senate. Okay. That makes us more democratic, right? If the people get to choose the Senate, right, it makes us more democratic, so it must be a good thing, right? It's got to be a good thing if it's more democratic, am I right? You know me too well. Okay, listen. This was a horrible idea, in my opinion. All right, raise your hand if you can name the 2 senators that represent us in Washington, D.C. from the state of Kansas. You think you can do it?
I don't know.
Anybody else think you can do it?
I think I know one of them. Mike Pompeo is one of
No,
them.
no, no. Mike Pompeo is Secretary of State.
Yeah,
He used to represent the 4th District, Kansas, in the House of Representatives. He's never been a senator. Been director of CIA.
What was Sam Brownback?
Sam Brownback was a senator and then our governor. That was a long time ago. Pat Roberts is one of our senators. He's retiring, and that's the seat that's going to be filled by Barbara Bollier or Roger Marshall? What about the other senator? See, this is my point. Most Kansans don't even know who their freaking senators are. Why are we electing them? You think the state legislatures, if I went up there to Topeka and said, hey, who are our 2 senators from Kansas? You think they'd know? Hell yeah, they'd know. Okay? But the people don't. His name is Jerry Moran from Hayes, Kansas. Okay? Now, Pat Roberts, he's been in the Senate for a long time. Okay? He doesn't live in Kansas anymore. He lives in Virginia. His kids went to school in Virginia. He lived in Virginia. Now he holds an address in Kansas. For the last probably 20 years, he hasn't lived in Kansas, which really pisses me off. Jerry Moran lives in Hayes, and he travels back almost every weekend from D.C. to Hayes, which I respect. I'm not a huge Jerry Moran fan, okay? He's a moderate, okay? Yeah.
So they allowed that, if that he wasn't even in our state. Do a lot of
I know,
states
you
do
gotta
that?
have it, you just gotta have an address.
A lot of other states do that.
Other senators, yeah, they're in there for 6 years, and, you know, every time they're up for re-election, they pretend to be this or that, and, you know. It kind of pissed me off, I think you should live here. Now, I know it's tough. You got to fly back and forth, okay? But, hey, you're making $174,000 a year. You're in a very exclusive club. You're representing your state. You need to spend time in your state, okay? That's my opinion, okay? Now, guys, I'm going to break from this for a minute and talk about the 17th Amendment, and I'm going to talk about the 16th Amendment, okay? I am a member of a club or an organization, which my wife calls a cult, okay? But this is a pin that I wear when I go to Topeka and help represent this organization called Convention of the States, okay? Now, we're talking about the Constitutional Convention, okay? I think we should repeal these 2 amendments, okay? And I think we should have term limits on members of Congress. Now, there's 2 ways to propose an amendment. 1, 2/3 of both houses of Congress propose it, okay? Now, is Congress going to propose term limits on itself? Ever? No. Okay, now there have been a few members that have introduced it, but it's not going anywhere. You know, I mean, Ted Cruz introduced it from Texas, Senator from Texas introduced it, okay? It's not going anywhere. So the other way to propose an amendment is by a national convention of the states, okay? So just like the Constitutional Convention in 1787, you would invite states to send delegates to a convention for the purposes of proposing amendments. Chief among them, term limits for Congress. Now, to this point, 13 states have agreed to send delegates to a convention of the states. Kansas has not joined yet. So 2 years ago, I went to Topeka wearing this button, and I sat in on the House committee, Judiciary Committee, that was proposing Kansas join. It passed the Kansas House, but failed in the Kansas Senate. Okay, so we're still waiting for Kansas to join the Convention of the States for the purposes of proposing amendments or repealing amendments. Okay, so let me talk about the 16th and the 17th in combination. Okay, so does anybody know what the 16th Amendment is? Okay, when did most people start, like, get a job, start working? Before that? 16. So you get a job at 16, you start paying what? Taxes, okay? The 16th Amendment is the direct income tax. Okay, so prior to this amendment, the national government, which could tax, right, would tax the states based on their population. So the more people you have in your state, the more you tax your people, they pay. Does that make sense? Okay. The 17th Amendment is direct election of senators. Okay. Okay. So these two things are drastically going to change our system. Okay. Now, the national government comes into your paycheck before you even see it and takes the money out. Yes? Now, wouldn't it be nice? I think it would be nice. Instead of them doing that, if we all had to write a check every 2 weeks to the federal government for our taxes. Oh, but you'd have to. You go to jail if you don't. Do you think people would pay attention to what the government was doing with their money if they had to write a check every 2 weeks to the federal government? Do you think people would be paying attention? Do you think they'd know who their senators were that are increasing their taxes or spending this money that we need the tax dollars for? Yeah, out of sight, out of mind. So this does away, okay? So before this, they would tax the states, right? So if we weren't happy about, so this is what happens. Topeka taxes us. Then Topeka pays the tax to the national government. So because Topeka's taxing us, we're paying attention to who is taxing us and why they're taxing us, okay? And since Topeka is electing the senators, okay, the state legislature, Topeka is electing the senators. The senators are the ones that are responsible for passing tax bills on the states. So the states say to the senators, whoa, hold on a minute. You're going to raise our taxes? You see what I'm saying? So the state legislatures are saying to the senators, look, you need to knock that crap off up in Washington, D.C. Okay? So by taking away the states, okay, here out of the equation, okay, this is no longer in the equation. So now you have that direct relationship between the national government and the people. Okay, there's no middleman to say, wait a second. Okay, do you think we would have a $26 trillion national debt if we didn't have these amendments? There's no way the states would have allowed the national government to be that fiscally irresponsible. Yeah.
This is not a place question, but when's the last time the national debt has decreased?
2 years, 1995 and 96. It was the last time we had a balanced budget. Actually, we had a surplus. Okay, so when you talk about a budget, you got revenue and expenditures, right? Okay, in the 90s, okay, if you go back to 1990, 91, my last year in college, okay, 91. We were just getting the word processor. Okay, my wife has a Mac at home. It's like in a suitcase, and the screen's about that big. Okay, and a little thing pops down and you type on it. In the 90s, we went from almost nobody having a computer to everybody having a computer. Then you had the internet, so you had massive growth, economics, tax dollars flowing in. Republican Congress saying no to President Clinton on spending. So they cut spending and in revenue increased. And we balanced the budget 2 years in a row.
That would be the first thing I would do as president, is try to lower the national debt.
I agree. And but they all have short-term goals. That's why in a second term, it's easy for presidents to do that because they don't have to run for re-election. Anytime you cut anything, It causes pain. Politicians don't like to cause pain because they don't get reelected.
I would cut the amount of people in government and cut the salary.